And we're live. All right. Let's start the show. Good afternoon, everyone. It's Friday, October 8th, 2021. Today, we're talking about Apple Watch Series 7, Facebook's no good, very bad Monday, and the iPhone 14, because this is the iMore show. Joining me, as always, is iMore contributor Karen Freeman. Hey, Karen.
Hello.
And joining us today as our special guest is iMore news writer Stephen Warwick. Hey, Stephen.
Hello.
All right. So, it's Apple Watch Series 7 Day for pre-orders. Yay.
Have you
Before we
pre-ordered?
dive into the news, who's getting one? Not me.
No. Karen?
No, I'm going to stick with my 6 for now.
Cool. That was a short segment onto the iPhone 14.
Yeah, now the iPhone 14. Not the year for it. Not the year for it.
I think that'll be the case for a lot of people. Probably.
Let's dive into some news really quick. Not so much Apple related, but still interesting in the tech sphere. Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp had a pretty bad Monday. Facebook and a lot of its related properties went down for a long time on Monday due to, Stephen, was it a DNS error?
Oh, I don't know like the full technical ins and outs. The way Facebook described it was a single like configuration change. So like if you think you had a bad Monday, it's like somebody pressed one button or like kind of typed one wrong line of code or put the wrong thing in the wrong other thing and whammy, like gone for multiple hours. No Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. And not just that, it wasn't just like the platforms, but it's like all the internals that Facebook use like to communicate internally as well. So not only was like Facebook down, but like nobody within Facebook could contact anybody else within Facebook to like talk about it and try and figure out what was going on. It's pretty terrible.
It's pretty unbelievable that Facebook is set up that way. That one error could take down all of Facebook's properties for so long.
Yeah,
and
it is.
I know that a lot of people rely on Facebook and even like Facebook for day-to-day stuff and keeping in contact with people. But when I heard about this outage, my only feeling was, oh, no, how terrible.
Oh, no, anyway.jpg.
Yeah.
Classic Jeremy Clarkson. Yeah.
Truly.
Leave it off. I think I saw somewhere on Twitter.
Just
let it die.
Don't plug it back in.
Yeah. Oh, it's funny you say that, like how people rely on it, because the most interesting things for me was during the outage, Twitter broke its record for like the highest number of concurrent users ever on its platform. And not only that, people, including I think Jack, who's like founded Twitter, he was taking jabs at Facebook about like how unstable and unreliable their platform was. And then the huge influx of users on Twitter broke Twitter. So
yeah, that was pretty funny.
That happened. And then also Signal, not Telegram. No, Telegram. Sorry, not Signal.
Yeah,
Telegram,
not Signal.
Gained, what's the difference? Gained 70 million users in one day. Or like not even one day, in the space of like a few hours. So like it's pretty wild how they're not totally substitutable. But like how people were just like, oh my gosh, Facebook, Instagram, gone, WhatsApp, gone. Immediately hop to another, rather than just enjoy the downtime, as it were. It's
we need to get our conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
We need them
from somewhere.
We got them on Telegram.
I use Facebook mostly for marketplace. This is weird. Like you can get some great deals on like golf clubs, graphics cards. Go on.
I was just going to say, I don't think Facebook is going anywhere anytime soon, because I think different people use it for different things. Like Stephen, you use it to buy and sell things. My kids are similar in age to you, and they used it throughout high school to organize their various social groups that they were in, meetups and so forth. And I use it because I have friends from so many different segments of my life, because I grew up moving all over, and I have friends from all over the world that don't know each other, that I don't have any way to really stay in touch with. They won't email. They're not going to text. It's just kind of like the place where everybody gets together.
Yeah. I once saw somebody trying to sell a series of Domino's pizza dips on Facebook Marketplace. It was about £5 for 12, unopened, hopefully.
Did
But
they
yeah,
did they were they
I have no idea.
successful?
I don't know.
Perishable?
That
This
feels
is weird.
that feels like the kind of thing that specifically targets like
They were-
Craigslist.
They were
tries to build
they were
Craigslist.
delicious, Karen. I'm happy to report.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like a whole. I've got the image somewhere. I'll tweet it later. You can see. But yeah, I did want to see someone try and sell pizza dips from Domino's.
Yeah,
Like,
who would
you know,
buy
like,
that? Steven
sort-
stares at the camera
Yeah.
awkwardly.
the sauce that comes in the corner of the box and the one that
Yeah.
comes with the chicken
Yeah, we
strippers.
know.
Yeah.
We have that here too.
Yeah,
No.
I think about you hear all this hubbub, especially last year during iOS 14, about how Apple was like trying to kill Facebook or whatever with its privacy settings, and I keep thinking about things like, if Apple was really trying to kill Facebook, you know what they do is they release iMessage for Android. They'd put iMessage on Android and Windows. They would put iMessage everywhere they could. And like with iOS 15, they've sort of taken a stab in that direction with FaceTime
with
on the web,
FaceTime.
but we're not there yet.
Does anyone use that, by the way?
I mean, I think Brian Wolf wrote a how-to on it. But other than Brian, I'm not.
I literally use Windows and have not found cause to do it.
I have to tell you, I tried FaceTime. I have a weekly Zoom call with my family, and I'm in the middle generation, so it's like with my mom and with my kids. And we have always used Zoom since the pandemic started. And I tried using FaceTime, and every single one of us are on all Apple products, and it just did not work. There were one of my kids kept going in and out. We couldn't hear them, and there was some other issue, and everybody couldn't see each other, and it was a mess. So we're back to Zoom. I was disappointed. It's the first time I've ever been really let down by an Apple service.
It's wild. I use FaceTime audio all the time to talk to my sister. That's been pretty reliable. Although I realized that I was talking to her this week and something was going wrong, and I realized now it's because you're talking on Wi-Fi and you're trying to download a giant file. That's it. That's why. Perils of Wi-Fi calling.
A very bad Monday for Facebook.
Yeah, it's so weird when things like that happen. And it used to happen all the time, a decade ago.
Yeah.
Facebook, Twitter.
And it wasn't just Facebook. It was Instagram. Arguably, might be even more popular with certainly with younger generations, and WhatsApp, which is it's not so big in the U.S., but internationally, it's enormous.
Yeah, definitely, no, it's Karen, like you said. I think it's not crazy because Facebook owns all the platforms, right? It's not like unreasonable to think, but it does seem silly. It's like that an outage, like you'd think they would. Kind of ring fence those just a little bit, like some resilience in the infrastructure to be like, hey, if we lose one, the other two can keep going.
Right, at least between their properties.
If Facebook was a jet engine, like all the engines would have cut out at the same time, and
right.
So, but also, the fact it's hilarious to me that the outage, like Facebook relies internally on its external. It's all on the same thing, right? So, no one at Facebook can even communicate to say like, "Hey, like, is something wrong?" It's
insane.
Yeah. So
they're like literally walking to each other's home offices to get this sorted out.
It does make me wonder, though. Between like Facebook and Instagram and Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp and all of it, like, do we think that Facebook.com, that particular product, Facebook.com or the Facebook app, are more popular or as popular as the other like subsidiary products together, like Instagram, like Messenger, like WhatsApp?
It's hard now because I see when Facebook says, "Oh, we have however many hundreds of billions of users."
Hundreds of billions.
do they mean across all of their? Because obviously, from a business standpoint, Facebook, the higher the number, the better. So you'd think, well, of course, they would include Instagram and WhatsApp in that. So I don't know if there's much public data on probably is. You could probably just Google it. But it's a funny. I think it's a generational thing, kind of, Karen, like you said. Like, I don't know how many people, like I sort of use all of them, but I don't know how many of those people there are anymore. I think there's a lot of people who just use Facebook and probably a lot of people who just use Instagram or just use WhatsApp. So
Yeah. Like my mom uses Facebook, but Instagram is that's just too much. Like she's not going to get on Instagram. And if she does, my father-in-law is actually on Instagram, and he doesn't fully understand how it works. Like he says, well, why are my grandkids sending me X, Y, and Z, like political stuff or whatever, and trying to explain, like, they're not sending it to you. They're just posting it. It's sort of his only social media experience. But that's the average. I would say for the most part, the younger people tend to be on the Instagram. And
that's a bold starting point for social media, to put your father-in-law straight onto Instagram as like a first.
It wasn't my idea, but he wanted to follow his grandkids somewhere, and that's where his grandkids are active.
I see.
Like if he went on Facebook, he would never see anything of his grandkids. He would basically just see me, because I'm the one who's active on Facebook.
Yeah, so, it does.
He's following his grandkids there.
It's interesting that you say that, Karen, about like single platform use, because that just goes to the idea of why Facebook puts stories everywhere, and why everybody's puts stories everywhere. Why we're inundated with freaking stories, except on Twitter. They got rid of
I love the memes of that, where it's like, hey, Google put stories in like Google Docs. It's like a spreadsheet with stories at the top of it and stuff. Those are great.
It uses AI to have your spreadsheets make stories. And your spreadsheets literally come alive and ask, what is their purpose for being? Oh, man. It gets existential. But yeah, because if you're only on Facebook, that's the only place you can find what are, I assume, profitable stories. Since it's all about money, I have to assume stories are in some way profitable.
You get links for affiliate and stuff. And
yeah.
Right.
So moving on a little bit, I do want to talk about a story that came up yesterday, Stephen, that you wrote a lot about. Sort of fallout from the Epic Apple ruling.
Yeah,
a company called Paddle.
Paddle, yeah. Well, so Paddle is a company that kind of already exists. They kind of describe themselves. I'll read it so I don't fudge it. A global revenue platform for software companies. And Paddle, so they've announced this thing, and they're describing it as like an alternative in-app purchase payment system for iOS. So right now, you want to buy anything on an app on your iPhone. You use InApp Payments, you press the button, you use Apple Pay or whatever you want. Apple takes 30% or 15%, depending on how much the developer you're paying, is earning. And that's one of the key issues at the heart of this antitrust trial with Epic Games and Apple. And we got a ruling that says, hey, Apple, you're no longer going to be allowed to what they would describe as kind of anti-steering measures, which are developers can't select Spotify and Netflix. You can't buy those in-app. You can only buy those on the various websites, but you can't say in the app, hey, go to Spotify.com and buy this. Currently, you're not allowed to do that. And that's changing. But Paddle have sort of, I think, have jumped the gun with what they describe as like it's a true like-for-like drop-in replacement for in-app purchases that developers can use, and rather than pay 30% or 15% commission to Apple, they pay, it's either 10 or 5% commission to Paddle, and they handle all the payment stuff in the way that Apple currently does with in-app purchases. And Paddle's like, developers can register interest. This is going live when the injunction comes, which is December the 7th. And they're saying this, that, it's innovative. This is the first time bringing competition to in-app purchases. I was very skeptical when I heard about the announcement, and everyone I've spoken to has been quite skeptical about it as well. All the reports that I've kind of read. We spoke to Florian Mueller at Foss Patents, who's covered the trial. He's an antitrust expert. And he's actually, so he has his own antitrust case against Apple, right? So if there's anyone who would want this to work, it would be Florian. And he's like, look, this is not, what the injunction kind of says, what it allows for. And his kind of reckoning of it was any developer sort of that tried to use this would just get their app rejected by Apple. And I don't know if any developers would want to risk being the first to try and take the plunge and have their app rejected or removed from the App Store, or worse, lose a developer account or something. So yeah, someone definitely trying to kind of capitalize on the Apple versus Epic rule and introduce this alternative in-app payment method, but it might end up in court. There might be, because the court has to oversee the ruling that's been given against Apple in this particular regard. But yeah, it's a whole thing. It's a wait and see. But Paddle, in response, sort of said, well, hey, we think it's lawful, and our experts sort of said it was lawful, but we would really appreciate Apple giving us some clarity on this. So again, this is one of the problems, is Apple hasn't really said anything about this. So yeah, it was a whole thing. So Paddle exists. I believe it's still taking signups. Some developers seem quite excited. I know some of them already use it for like the Mac App Store, where the rules aren't as tight as on, say, iPhone and iPad. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
I have to think that whoever's in charge of the stuff at Apple is just not sleeping at all. Like, this has just got to be making them insane, because this is just opening a whole can of worms. Once Paddle comes in, it just opens it up to all kinds of competition. Any company can do similar. They just can keep going lower and lower. And
yeah, it's a funny one. This is what Epic Games, not just Epic Games, but say, like, take the trial for instance. This is what they wanted. This is what they were asking for, which is, we don't want to use Apple's in-app payment system. We want to use our own. We want to look after our own customers. We don't want to pay commission to Apple, which that's a separate argument, and one the court seems to kind of back Apple on. But as I understood it, certainly as Florian, as we spoke to, as other people kind of understood it, that's not what the court has kind of ruled. The court ruling is quite ambiguous, which again, Florian would say plays into Apple's hands rather than developers or Epic. So, but yeah, I imagine whoever is dealing with this at Apple is not getting a lot of sleep. And there's a very full inbox. That would be my my guess.
Full days of meetings, and it'll be interesting to see how it pans out. I have to think Apple's going to figure out a way to quash it.
No. Yeah, same.
Yeah. So, all right. I just want some clarification on this bit, Stephen. So your understanding is that this would be like a native, like, payment screen.
Well, it's hard because they describe it. This is so I bumped into this after the fact. They describe it as, and that was a quote I read before. It's a true like-for-like drop-in replacement for Apple's in-app purchasing system, allowing developers to maintain a seamless user experience without having to pay Apple 30% of every sale. So that does sound, it almost sounds like an API, right, that you would put in your app and use. But the video demonstration they have of it shows someone being directed away from the app to Safari, either in web view or actual Safari, and making a payment as if you were just, surfing the web on a phone or somewhere else, and then going back into the app. So yeah, the problem is, so the Apple in the injunction is no longer allowed to stop developers from including in their apps or buttons external links or other calls to action to direct customers to purchasing methods. But the commission, that's a whole separate issue. Even if Apple lets developers take payments elsewhere, will they still have to pay Apple commission on those? Apple says yes, and the court ruling would sort of seem to agree with that. But yeah, this is the thing. It's not clear, because you can use Face ID, Touch ID for Apple Pay with Paddle. It isn't clear, I think, at this point, whether this is, like I said, they sort of described one thing and it kind of looks like another, because the description, if you just read it, you're like, oh, that's definitely not allowed. But when you look at it, you're like, oh, well, it's just a button that takes you to a website. So isn't that kind of what the ruling says? It's difficult. This is why I'm not Judge Yvonne Gonzalez Rogers, and why
there are many
there are many
there
reasons.
Really are many reasons that's
this is one of those reasons. Yeah.
The question I've got for Apple, and it's a question I've asked before, and I don't think I've seen a satisfactory answer. How does Apple plan to collect commission on apps that don't use its payment system?
Well, this is the problem. When Tim Cook was in court, Tim Cook was in court when he said that. Judge Gonzalez Rogers sort of asked him, like, hey, like, how would this work? What if people are allowed to make payments elsewhere? And Tim said, and it was kind of controversial, he was like, well, we'd still have to find a way to collect our... He would kind of ask the same question you did. He was like, we would still have to find a way to collect our commission, and that would be very bothersome. So surely it would be better to keep the system as they are, where they collect the commission automatically, rather than, say, Joe, you're a developer, half of your sales went through in-app purchases, half of them went through some other means, but Apple still took the 15 or the 30%. You would presumably have to present Apple with some sort of, hey, look, here's how much money I made, here's how much of it went through your in-app purchases, here's how much went through this other alternate thing. It's called Paddle. You might have heard of it. By the way, you still need to take 30% of this, so here's how much I earned. And then either you or Apple would calculate kind of how much you were owed, and then you would send them that money plus your 5 or 10% to Paddle. Maybe this is something I've seen floated around as well. This might end up, developers or users probably paying more commission than they already do. Yeah, it's a whole thing. But Joe, to answer you, I think the reason there's no satisfactory answer to that question is because Apple's answer to that question is that there is no satisfactory answer. That's why the solution we already have is the best one available.
Yeah, certainly from Apple's perspective.
Yeah.
And the question is, why? How does that not just become, how does that app that uses, say, Paddle, let's say Paddle's able to do their thing.
Yeah.
If an app uses Paddle, how does that just not become like a free app to Apple? Because, apps that are totally free and have no in-app purchase and are, supported by ads or whatever, they pay no commission.
This was exactly Apple's point in the trial, Tim Cook. Again, when he's the very same discourse where he said, we'd still have to find a way to take the commission. Judge Gonzalez-Rogers sort of asked, well, what if they were allowed to just, use alternative payment methods? And Tim Cook says, well, we would give up essentially our entire return on the App Store. Like you said, if it was an option, I'm sure every developer would take the option that involved giving no money to Apple and keeping more money. But you're right, that would mean the return of the App Store would effectively become nil, because 84% of apps on the App Store are already free and pay no commission to Apple. So of the remaining 16%, all of those would also become free apps, even if they did involve money, because the money would be going through other channels. So,
well, regardless, Apple has the upper hand, because Apple can simply take a look at an app and it says it has this Paddle or whatever button in it. Okay, well, we don't approve it then. You're not going to give us our commission, then we don't approve you.
This is the thing I think will just become another antitrust issue, is that even if Apple will still be the gatekeeper to the App Store. I don't like those terms because it's Apple's App Store. I've always been quite baffled by the idea that you can have a monopoly on your own product. Right. But it's say, like you said, it's like, okay, we're allowed, in-app purchases or alternative apps. Apple still has, it controls all of the doors, all of the exits, all of the entries, like you said. So I think solving one antitrust problem will probably cause another one.
Look, if you make, let's say you're the manufacturer of a packaged cookie and you want to sell it at your local grocery store. If they're making money on it, they're going to continue to carry it. If they're not making money on it, they're going to say, no, thanks, we don't want your cookie anymore. What motivation does Apple have to keep an app on the App Store that doesn't make them any money? And that's making money for someone else.
And I think this
using their platform.
And I think this is ultimately the argument for, look, I've heard developer arguments for why they don't want, say, third-party app stores, but I think this is ultimately an argument for them. Because, Stephen, you're absolutely right. I don't buy that Apple is a monopolist simply because it has a monopoly on its own platform.
Right.
But I think the ultimate question is, what should users be allowed to do with reasonable ease and comfort on devices that they purchase? Like, when is this device no longer under Apple's purview?
Yeah. It's a funny one. I think because, again, the third-party app stores, like alternative payments, if you've got say you could install the Epic Game Store on your iPhone, all the money there goes to the developers and to Epic Games. So Apple is, Karen, like you said, is hosting for free this, this store on its distribution platform of over a billion users, sorry. And everybody within that store is getting paid, except for Apple, who are hosting it for free.
I see that. I think that the answer there is don't put, and this is where it gets a little fraught. I think don't put third-party stores on the App Store itself. Like, I'm talking about side loading ultimately, and that's where it gets a little fraught.
Yeah, no, that's interesting.
Or, as a lot of Mac users know it, the way we do things.
Yeah, side loading has been kind of floated as the one of the solutions, but the thing to remember is that Google allows side loading on Android, and Google is also being sued into oblivion by Epic Games and is being prodded by a lot of the same antitrust probes that Apple is having, and that is something Judge Rogers said to Epic during the trial was, well, Epic said, well, we'd like side loading, like you said, and she's like, well, you're suing Google, who also allow side loading, so clearly you don't think that's the answer, or maybe you do, but you're suing for different reasons. So yeah, it's a whole can of worms inside of a minefield sort of situation.
To go back to the cookie example, Karen, it's like suing Walmart for not carrying your cookie.
Right. Yeah. You can't. I mean, the grocery store has the right to choose whether or not they carry your product.
And unlike the physical world, it's easier to establish a store in a digital space.
That is an interesting question that Karen said. Say someone somewhere mandated that Apple had to allow alternative payments. Say, what if Apple was just like, okay, free apps only, no in-app purchases, like the store's free, you can use it, nobody makes any money. Because Apple doesn't need that. It's only 1 or 2% of it. Yeah, of its global. Yeah. What if they were just like, do you know what? That's fine. Okay, nobody has to pay anything. It's okay.
Ever.
Then I'm just going to take my marbles and go home.
Yeah. Another argument for allowing third-party stores on the platform. Because Apple could very well do that. I do actually see the end result, like maybe medium-term end result, like a few years down the road, is Apple does or is made to allow actual native third-party payment systems in apps. Like next to, like, you could mandate that you use Apple's in-app purchase system, but you have to allow other in-app purchase systems.
So there'd be like a PayPal button and like a
or a Stripe button or whatever.
There would be the hotfix, which was, you're in Fortnite and there's a button that says in-app payment and there's a button that says Epic Direct Payment, and one is 30%, 20% cheaper than the other.
I can imagine all sorts of rules Apple would try to think of through that. Like, you can't offer discounts through your own payment method. You have to have the same price as the app.
Yeah, they do the same price. This is the thing: is every time you solve an issue, because Apple still owns the platform and control, all the cards. Every time you solve a gatekeeping issue, say, okay, you can have in-app purchases and you can have alternative payments. Well, what's to stop Apple, like you said, mandating the prices so they can't be different, for instance? Well, then you've got another antitrust issue, which is Apple controlling the prices, and then I don't know, you might fix that, and then another issue comes up as well. So
and like Stephen in the comments pointed out, Apple can just start charging the developer for their app to be there if they're not making money any other way.
Apple could treble, quadruple the what's a $99 fee, isn't it? The yearly. Apple could just start, fleecing all the free apps, or there are so many ways that could.
Right, they could quadruple that developer's fee and then discount it again for developers that use Apple's in-app purchase system exclusively. Yeah, for example.
On the other, I said, oh, what if they just said, okay, well, everything's free? They could decide, okay, there are no more free apps. Everybody has to charge. Like, there's money for everybody. There's no more free apps on the App Store. So.
Yeah, there's any number of endless ways that Apple could make money, and just keep changing things and making things difficult for.
I'm excited. It's an exciting time to be an App Store watcher and commenter.
Yeah.
Yes.
If that's what you're into.
If that's your particular brand.
I get paid for it, so it's all right, but
Yeah.
not everybody does, and that's okay.
Yeah. Before we move on, Karen, why don't you, speaking of payments and apps and whatnot, why don't you tell us about this week's sponsor?
Yes, SetApp. Getting things done is a challenge that everyone struggles with. One way to tackle it is to make sure you have the right tools. And for your computer, that means the right apps. The problem is not all apps do what they promise, and the drawn out search for the right solution makes it harder to get the job done. That's why there's SetApp. SetApp is on a mission to help users get more done. With SetApp, there's no more worrying about having to search for apps to solve a problem. SetApp packs more than 200 apps for your Mac and iPhone into one. There's an app for almost any task, so you can stay in your flow and finish what you started. With SetApp, you can think about your tasks, not apps. A dedicated curation team only selects the highest quality apps. New apps are added to SetApp regularly, updates are free, and all the apps are full-featured pro versions. It's also a great value. Instead of paying thousands of dollars for separate licenses, there's just the one flat monthly fee. Head over to setapp.com to try SetApp free for a week. If you like SetApp, pay just $9.99 per month as long as it's useful to you. And trust us, it will be. That's setapp.com.
All right. Thank you, Karen. So moving on, let's talk a little bit about Apple Watch Series 7 because it's out today. Well, pre-orders went up this morning and it's gone. It's
gone.
Maybe like one or two people. Like one or two people were able to place orders that'll arrive tomorrow or next Friday. And
congratulations to both of you. It's
everyone else gets theirs.
Is waiting until November.
Well, it's actually very interesting. I was checking on this myself this morning, and so titanium watch, so regular GPS aluminum, titanium watch, and stainless steel all slipped to first week of November pretty quick. The GPS plus cellular aluminum model was last week of October for a while. People don't. I think people don't consciously buy GPS plus cellular aluminum Apple watches, or at least it doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, that's sort of like the middle place.
Yeah, and you don't really have an option on the stainless steel or titanium because those are all GPS and cellular.
Yeah,
right.
Correct. Yeah, it's no, it's sort of expected, right? We certainly as a news writer, I always expect to write a shipping times have slipped to piece for whatever product happens to be being released that day. It's kind of a staple. But I was definitely surprised that I was sort of working on it within 5 minutes of the pre-orders going live.
Yeah.
And I think this is a basic economics. This is a supply rather than a demand issue. We've heard a lot, previously, or maybe Apple, changed the design or changed its mind last minute with a watch. I don't know if that necessarily is the case. It seems more likely that there are just supply issues. Mm-hmm. It was very strange that when Apple announced it alongside the iPhone, they said coming in the fall. Like it did that with the Mac Pro, I think, back in the day, and it was like 8 months later it was finally released, the trash can one. And so it was very strange that there was no official release date, no official pre-orders. And then when the pre-orders came, we heard, I think John Prosser, he reported, hey, look, these are going to be hard to get hold of. And sure enough, it went live. And Joe, as you said, is the interesting thing about Apple Watches, there are so many different combinations because of studio, and you can put basically any band with any watch. And there are so many different colors, and the GPS plus cellular, and the 3 different stages of finish. I was really surprised that there's some. So we reported today the like the Mallard Green, that band, Capri Blue, all like not available from launch. Like that they just never surfaced. So unless they were so popular in the first few minutes that they've just disappeared. Because most things are showing like as extended shipping times, but you can at least buy them. Whereas a lot of there was a few bits that were just like, this is not available. Like you cannot buy this anywhere. Doesn't matter how long you want to wait. Like it just can't be done.
I'm gonna guess that's COVID related.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. They like their fluoroelastomer supplier is just out.
Love that word. Love that word.
Anytime I
Fluoroelastomer.
can work fluoroelastomer into a sentence, I will.
You and Johnny Ive.
So yeah, it's one thing I've noticed is the stock in stores seem to be quite a bit better than online. So my wife is trying to get a hold of a watch, and the one she wants isn't online, but she can just walk into the store and pick it up, which is it's not something you normally it would be the other way around.
Is it the watch or the band that she wants?
It's the full watch that isn't available. Or it's not even necessarily not available, but it's definitely a lot longer. Whereas she can go in on launch day and arrange to pick one up. So in-store stock might actually be, if you missed out on a watch, if you're trying to pre-order one today and you still want one, it might be worth, don't just walk in, but if you can book one online to get it, and collect it in store over next weekend, certainly might be worth a pop.
Yeah. Give it a shot. I thought it was very strange. One bit of drama, sort of drama from this week is we didn't get any pricing except for the, initial pricing on the Apple Watch.
Starts from
$399.
Yeah, the usual price. And today, we wake up and Apple Watch pre-orders begin, and it's the same prices.
Right. So why all the
last
secrecy?
night, and then
it's the same watch, isn't it? So
it's the same price, same watch.
Who said that?
Who would have said such a thing? And I just, what was there? It just felt like there were a lot of odd unknowns this year with the watch, like at all. Like when
all
was
the
it going
tech
to launch?
specs as well. Like there's no Apple didn't like come up with these pages like in the last few days. Like these have all been ready to go. Maybe they didn't know when pre-orders were going to be, in fairness, like that. Maybe they literally, when they said fall, they didn't know. But yeah, it was the prices, but also, all the tech specs, comparison things, everything you would expect to see at an Apple launch.
I'm not sure there's I'm not sure like the normal tech specs page is there for the watch.
And there's no
now.
like comparison thing either. You can't compare the Series 7 to the Series 6.
I think you can compare it to the Series or to the SE.
You can, yes.
You can
because
compare
it's better than the
SE
SE
and the Series 3. But
it's better than both of those, yeah.
So did Apple stop selling the Series 6?
Discontinued as of today, yes.
Yeah,
you can get
that's
it.
why you can only
elsewhere.
compare models that Apple is currently selling.
You could get one yesterday, but you can't get one today. Is that right?
Yeah.
Right.
Wild.
I don't know who bought a Series 6 yesterday, but my heart goes out to you. Sorry.
It's very funny, actually, to me. I have a friend who just had his 4th wedding anniversary, and his present to his wife was an Apple Watch Series 6. And it was I was in the middle of working on my iPhone 13 review, and we were messaging back and forth. And he told me he had just bought her an Apple Watch, and I asked him if okay, so is this a Christmas present, or did you say something stupid? Not out of the realm of possibility, either of them. But no, it's an anniversary gift. And I was just sitting there. I didn't do the push my glasses all the way up into the back of my head thing. Look, well, you should have waited for the Series 7. I didn't do that.
Oh, I do that
because I'm a good friend. And his anniversary was this week, so it's not like
top tip. If that ever happens to you, just ask, how long ago did you buy it? And if they say less than 2 weeks ago, it's all right to tell them because they can return it. If it's more than 2 weeks, just let it slide. Just yeah.
But yeah, that's that was quite the little saga for me. But yeah, I
if anything, that's better. That shows more commitment than waiting until the Series 7 comes out and the price of the Series 6 drops and then buying it as an anniversary gift.
There you go. Yeah, that's a good spin. But yeah, I was struck this week how odd this particular Apple Watch launch seemed. Like there were just all these little details that were missing.
Yeah,
it
was odd. Go on, Karen.
Go ahead, Stephen. I think Stephen's right that it's a supply issue. And perhaps Apple didn't know exactly when it was going to have enough watches made to have a launch, and that's why they didn't give us a launch date last month.
Yeah, the whole thing. The thing has been bizarre. ever since the keynote where a Series 7 appeared on the screen. And everybody went, hey, that looks just like last year's model, and nothing
Wait
like
a minute.
all the leaks that we were told to believe.
Yeah, and I mean,
Been
there
downhill from there.
and I can imagine supply issues. So there's new glass on the front of the aluminum model.
Even
And
even
there's
that
a
we'd
new
heard.
OLED screen, right?
Yeah,
That OLED screen is new.
And it's the display is closer to the glass, so it makes it lower profile and flatter. We heard before the announcement at the event that there were supply issues. It was like, oh, Apple's tried to make the watch, it's gone terribly wrong. There's going to be a huge delay, and everyone was like, oh, it's the new design. They're struggling with the new design. It's coming. And
nope.
Yeah,
But
we got played.
It is a new design, though. It doesn't look that different to the eye, but the shape is different. So Apple does have to manufacture all new cases for them.
And molds, yeah.
Yeah. Everything
Renee made an interesting point in his video earlier this week about how Apple's probably like not that many people. Think about how many people own iPhones. It's quite a small portion of those people own watches. So Apple is probably thinking just as much about everybody who's never bought an Apple Watch ever than they are about people who have the 5 or the SE or the 6 and are thinking about upgrading. Yeah, because it's not a device, I think, like an iPhone that you tend to buy kind of every year in like a cycle or even a super cycle.
Right. Yeah. I honestly don't think that it's worth upgrading your Apple Watch unless you have a Series 3 or older.
I have a Series 3. Yeah.
If you have
it is definitely worth me upgrading.
Yeah, and if you have a Series 2, what are you doing?
My mother-in-law still has the Series 0 that my wife gave to her. So
listen, if it works and it does what you need it to do, then stick with it.
So my wife is getting the Series 7 and will pass on the Series 3 to my mother-in-law.
That's pretty good.
Apple still sells the Series 3, so
I will say that
sure you have to wipe it every time there's a software update. Like
I will say that jumping from a Series 0 to a Series 3 will be a noticeable uptick in quality.
Yeah.
Because I could make the argument, I think pretty solidly, that the Series 0, or at least in my experience, never fully worked as a device. It was
never
rough
came out of the
whole,
beta.
It was rough slow. The whole time. It was rough the whole time.
It was slow, but I went from the 0 to the 3 to the 6, and each of those was a noticeable jump in quality.
Yeah,
and speed.
And like my sister, my sister's buying her first Apple Watch this week. She bought her first Apple Watch today.
Wow.
Ever. And Karen, I think you're absolutely right. They're thinking about the people who don't have watches most of all.
What do you mean, Karen? That was my point.
Oh, is that your point? Look, here's what you have to understand. Everybody looks the same to me. Everybody sounds the same to me. This is my deep, dark secret. Also, my memory is nothing. My short-term memory is nothing. But let's move on.
It says our names in front of the pictures.
I can't read either. You're uncovering all my deep, dark secrets. I just got this job on a smile and charm. But moving on to devices we don't yet actually know exist, of course they do. iPhones for 2022. We have rumors this week of multiple rumors about multiple iPhones. So let's start with the iPhone SE. I don't know that this is necessarily a surprise to anybody, but it sounds like the iPhone SE 2022 will not feature any sort of design changes.
Yeah, this
not shocking.
Super disappointing. We've heard this a couple of times, but yeah, 2022 iPhone SE will apparently look exactly like the current SE, which of course looks like the iPhone 8, 7.
Well, Stephen,
6.
I'm going to disagree with you there. I'm very glad they're keeping it exactly the same, because if they change it, my mom and my aunt and my father-in-law are all going to come after me.
Because it'll be your fault personally.
Because it's my fault personally that they have to learn how to swipe up instead of press a home button.
My parents both. Dad's got an 8, mum's got an SE, or vice versa. I can't remember. But yeah, the touch ID button. Oh yeah, Apple should literally market this as the phone you would buy your parents. Like that's what it
Yeah.
should say on the website, because it is.
That's exactly what it is.
But it
My
is.
aunt came to me before she went to the Apple store and said, "Which phone should I buy?" And I told her exactly, I told her to get the SE. I explained why and everything. And
Yeah.
like a month later, she's like, "I'm so glad you told me to buy that phone. It's the phone for old people and it's perfect because I'm old." I'm like, "Okay, you're welcome."
Yeah. No.
We have these rumors of the iPhone 14. We'll talk about in a bit, but possibly under display Touch ID. So
Yeah.
maybe not in the 14, but maybe the phone after that, I think, was the most recent rumor. Or am I confusing my rumors and none of that's happening?
So that was rumored for this year, and then
yeah.
well, everything was wrong.
Everything
wrong.
everywhere was wrong about everything.
Yeah.
About everybody. But we do have those rumors of in-display Touch ID coming at some point, and I think Apple's going to stick with the iPhone 8 design for the SE for a while, even when they get under display Touch ID. If and when they get under display Touch ID, I think people want that home button.
It's handy because, like, even Karen, like you said, it was like you said to your mom, your mother-in-law, like, just go into the store and ask for this. People can literally go in and say, "I want the iPhone that still has a home button," and like that settles it.
Yeah.
But
and
A15 chip and 5G, so
modern specs.
Yeah,
it's an older design.
I think it's worth it for Apple to keep updating basically that same form factor, just with better guts. Maybe throw a better camera on there once in a while.
Yeah,
and not just for older people, but also for kids. I mean, people are buying their kids iPhones younger and younger, and you don't want to spend $1,000 on an iPhone for a little kid.
Maybe Apple should. So instead of the phone you'd buy your parents, it's like the phone you'd buy for somebody else. That's what.
Well,
if you're reading iMore, then this is the phone that you want to buy for somebody else.
Yeah.
Or if you really think you need a backup phone, like an emergency backup phone.
Right. I mean, listen, if you lose your phone or it's stolen and you don't have the the extra Apple Care Plus where you get a replacement, and you need another phone until let's say it's 3 months until the next iPhone comes out, and you're a techie, you're not going to want to buy a new 13 Pro if that's what you've been using 3 months before the 14 comes out. So if you have to buy yourself a phone, maybe grab an SE to hold you for a few months.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, Karen, that you bring up, this is the phone for older folks, because I mean, think about, who's most likely to be on, say, a fixed income, and think about the price of the SE and the sort of benefit of that kind of phone. It's, it's people who are going to want to it's older folks who are going to want to stick with what they know. More often than not.
And the SE, like as this rumor says, it always comes with quite a spicy processor. Like the previous SE came out with the current gen A13, Joe, at the time, which was the it was the processor that was in the iPhone 11, and we were like, oh gosh, this is amazing. That's not so that like your gran can play Clash of Clans in 4K with ray tracing. It's future proof, and it means that phone is going to last 4, 5, 6 years, which is. Again, not to necessarily to stereotype, but like people who sort of tend to buy these phones also tend to keep them for longer because they're like you said, Karen, there's not a phone that someone would buy if they're trying to stay on top of the iPhone curve with the latest and greatest that Apple is doing. So
oh, sorry, go ahead, Karen.
I was just gonna say the other thing is that I hate to stereotype, but generally people who are older really dislike changing over to a new phone and all that's involved in the changeover. So, if they come out with a new SE every couple of years, that makes it more future proof.
Yep.
So when they do buy an SE, they're not buying a 3-4 year old phone. They're buying a phone that's only a year or two old so that they can hang on to it for the next 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah, actually, do you know what? I take it all back. I'm super excited for the SE. Just knowing that if any time next year my mum says to me, I need a new phone, I know immediately which phone she's going to get, and it's going to be just like the one she had previously. And
but it's going to be great on the,
and she'll love it
on the inside, and it'll last for years. I mean, think about the first generation of iPhone SE. I think that's still got iOS 15. Did it not?
Maybe
because it's the same generation of phone as the 6S.
Sounds about right, yeah.
which did get iOS 15. That port,
Whether you should install iOS 15 on an iPhone SE. This another matter.
I do think of the poor developers who have to still target that 4-inch screen size. I love that size of phone, but oh no, poor folks doing that. But moving on from the iPhone SE 2022, we have the flagship iPhone 2022, the iPhone 14. We had a couple of things this week. An odd report came out. So this year, the iPhone 13 launched with, or the 13 Pro and Pro Max launched with a 1 terabyte storage option. And now there's a new rumor that is claiming that the iPhone 14 will have a 2 terabyte option, which
that'll be perfect for Christine right about the time she has her second kid, so she can take all the photos.
Well, on 4K ProRes, she's gonna fill that up fast because I think there was another thing this week for like about 12 seconds of 4K ProRes footage took up almost a gigabyte of space.
I think you can actually see there's like a time limit if you try to start like 4K ProRes. I saw one on, I think it was Ben Geskin actually on Twitter. He had 142 gig of free space, and there was a time limit at the top. It was like it's like basically an 18-minute icon. So yeah, when I first saw this, I was like 2 terabytes. That's absurd. But yeah, when you think that 6 gigabytes is 1 minute of ProRes 4K video, maybe it's not as silly as it sounds.
Now, John Prosser is claiming that no, this won't happen. And the thing, I mean, his argument.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, it was earlier this week. He said it's not going to happen. But I don't know. Like, I understand his argument and why like his sources might say no, assuming he's getting it from sources. I don't actually know. But because, Apple makes big internal changes on sort of what we like years like this that we might call S years or whatever, which we say so dismissively. Because huge internal changes happen on S years, and those are the more important iPhone years, not the new designs, the actual upgrades in the chassis. But given like the ProRes example, Apple aims that stuff at like pros and like prosumer, like aspiring pros, the people who are making movies in their backyards with their friends or at college, things like that. Or Steven Soderbergh very specifically. Several scenes in the first Avengers movie, I think, were shot on an iPhone too. But it's, most pros still use like pro equipment. So this is people are going to be enthusiastic about using these features. I don't know that they're going to be paying that much attention to how much storage they're using, and they'll fill up 1 terabyte fast.
Oh yeah.
You let them.
I mean, I think there's a movement in society in general where more and more people are going into the field of creator on whether it's social media, YouTube, whatever it is. And a lot of them are, and they're doing it on their own. They're not, going to some big company where they're going to be handed all kinds of equipment. They're just a person in their home and they have an iPhone, and, it's a great piece of equipment to get started in doing something like that. So I think there's definitely an argument to be made for putting more and more storage and these sort of pro features on iPhones.
And now you can record in ProRes, you can record in Dolby Vision, you can you can eat up all the storage space that Apple will sell you. And yeah, so 2 terabytes, it does feel like maybe not a 2022 thing, but it also doesn't feel unrealistic.
Yeah, storage is always getting, smaller and cheaper. So one day, and you'd think they'd put 2 terabyte in the Pro, trickle down 1 terabyte to the regular phones, and raise the base storage of the entire lineup.
Right.
What I think is funny, what you'll often find in storage, like external hard drives, is you'll see the 512 gigabyte model, and then the 1 terabyte model, and the 2 terabyte model, and then they'll jump to 4 terabytes.
Yeah.
There won't be so don't expect a 3 terabyte iPhone, but maybe one day expect a 4 terabyte iPhone.
I went for the 256 Pro 13 in pre-orders. And then I changed my mind because the only reason I got that over the 128 was this 4K ProRes. And so I get my phone in the iPhone upgrade program, and it's a £5 difference between the two. What was that, like $9? It's like between the two configurations. And I was like, if somebody offered me this one feature for £5 a month, like there's no way I would pay that. So I was just like, and went for the 128 gig. So
when the iPhone first came out, how much storage did it have on it? Was it
I think it was
8 gigabytes? Did it start at 8?
I think it was 4 and 8. I think it started at 4.
I mean, can you imagine
12, I don't
for
know.
$5.99?
Can you imagine now having a 4 gigabyte phone?
4, 8, or 16 gig.
I just thought about that, and the idea of that phone exploded in my brain.
Hey, that's nothing. The old like PlayStations used to come with memory cards of like 32 megabytes.
Yeah.
You would save like your life's work of games on.
Right, but you could always throw in another memory card.
Yeah,
With your phone, like that's your phone. Like you can't add anything to it.
Everything was like the iOS was smaller. All the apps were smaller.
No, but
there weren't
still,
apps for at first.
Yeah, true. There weren't apps.
The pictures were smaller because there weren't so many megabytes on the camera.
There was no video either. There was no video either. Think about how much emphasis Apple places on the video capabilities of the iPhone today. And think back, 13 years ago, 14 years ago.
15 years next year, yeah.
Oh, stop it.
I wish I would have hung on to my first iPhone just to...
Did you have the original?
I didn't have the original. No, my first iPhone was I want to say it was the 4, maybe?
My first
still
iPhone
my favorite
too.
Design.
Yeah.
And that's actually what makes the prospect of the iPhone 14 so exciting, is that like that 4 design is reported to be coming back, like a more modern version, including the round volume buttons. Yes. My favorite little detail of that one. Actually, my favorite little detail of the iPhone 4 design is I actually liked the asymmetrical antenna notching. I appreciated it. I appreciate geometric asymmetry. And so
you buy a Galaxy Z Flip. Use it for a few weeks. It'll
twist.
Yeah,
that's what I'll do. The editor-in-chief of an Apple site will switch to Android. Oh, that'll be the day.
No, you're right. These designs do look cool. I hope John Prosser's not wrong. John, if you're listening, there's a lot riding on this.
There's a lot of happiness riding on this, John. So he did have a video out today talking about the iPhone 14 versus 14 Pro, and it seems like we talked about this a while back. Hole punch design, and putting most of Face ID under the display. That seems like it's probably reserved for the Pro phones next year.
Yeah,
and the standard phones will still have like this year's notch, which isn't surprising.
If that turns out to be the main difference between that people note between the Pro and the regular lineup, that is just going to be endlessly eviscerated in the world of memes.
Yeah, it'll be
like pay $300 extra to have a hole punch instead of a notch.
Yeah.
No.
I think. Do you know what I think? I don't like. I prefer the notch to the hole punch. I'm just going to say it. Right, it's fine. You crucify me in the comments or whatever. But like, I think people, once they switch to the hole punch, will realize how annoying and obstructive they are. And actually, the notch is preferable, because you'd see it the very first time Apple announced it, and then you never think of it again. That hole punch camera is always there every time you look at it. And
yeah, I agree with you, Stephen. At least I don't think there's really any difference between them.
People, the notch will go, and then people realize they never had it so good, and they will,
as a giant.
They will take to the streets and demand Apple return it.
They'll buy the 14 in droves instead of the Pros.
Yep.
By the way, I've been playing around with the iPhone 13 Pro camera more. I played around with with the photographic styles. Did I say it right?
Yeah.
And I was not particularly impressed with the photographic styles. I only really liked one of them. But I wouldn't set my phone to it. You know what I mean? I would rather just add a filter after.
I'd be very interested to get your take after because you can customize them. I'd be very interested to see if you could customize one that fits your
I
style.
wouldn't. I mean, I would say the second, whatever the second one is called.
Rich contrast.
Rich contrast. That one I liked the
How
look
do you
of
know
it,
that?
but he knows, he's like an encyclopedia. He knows all
Yeah.
that stuff. But I don't like it better than just the regular camera. I wouldn't. I like the look of it. It's fine. If that's what the camera was, I'd be okay with that. But I just don't think that it's an improvement over just using the regular camera and then tweaking it later.
Someone just made a great point in the chat with the notch. How, like, without a notch on a phone, how do you know if it's upside down or not? It's a really good point.
Yeah, when the screen is off. Oh no,
I rate that.
That's funny.
That's
Well, there's the speaker at the top.
Yeah, or the picture,
still a
I guess, that you've got on your phone.
yeah. Well, I mean, if you look at the iPhone 13, actually, I was looking this upside down, ironically enough.
There we go.
But the speaker is actually, I think it's very small, very like nestled in there this year.
Yeah, it has gotten very small. But back to the camera again.
Yeah.
I also played around with the macro lens, and I love it.
Yeah.
I took a picture of my eyeball, and it sounds like ridiculously vain. I know. I'm sorry.
Everybody's taking pictures of their eyeball. No,
I'm not posting it anywhere. But
she was trying to take a regular photo and just didn't know she had the selfie camera on this.
No, I was actually using the back camera, so it took me a few tries to stare into the right lens because I wasn't sure which one it was. But anyway, I got a picture, and I have blue eyes, but I have a brown freckle in my eye, which I have always had. But in this picture, I noticed I actually have like 4 freckles. I have the one big one and 3 little ones. And I took the picture outside in front of my house, and I could see a reflection of the trees behind my house in my eyeball in this picture. It was so sharp. Yeah. It is wild.
They did a great job with that macro photography.
It's unbelievable.
You know, it'll be great when you have some more control over it, but right out of the gate, it's very well done, I think.
Did they fix that camera jump thing yet? Like where it changes automatically? I don't know if they. I thought they were maybe done it in the beta.
It still does that weird jump. That's a little bit weird, but you know, I think it's a fantastic lens to have.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. We have come down to the end of our hour. Thanks, Stephen, for joining us this week.
My pleasure.
Great to have you on. Big thanks to everyone who showed up and watched live and commented along with us. Thank you, Christine, for showing up in the comments. Great to see you there too. Thanks to everyone who's gonna listen or watch later in their podcatcher of choice or on YouTube. We do this for the audience. We would just be screaming into the void without you.
It would just be a journal if nobody listened.
Yeah, it's just an audio diary at that point. Big thanks to But One, edited by our wonderful friend Jim Metzendorf, who always makes it sound so lovely.
Thank you, Jim.
And until next week, thanks everybody. This has been the iMore Show. Bye.